Nice to see you all. Good to see so many familiar faces in the room. It's been a little bit. We today are going to focus a little bit more on rural America. So last year you heard LTRCO speak about his great undercover boss opportunity, but more importantly you heard him speak about the challenges that we face when we try to connect these really hard to connect areas. UScellular is in its 40th year of connecting people to what matters most, and we do it primarily in areas that are topographically, technically, financially difficult to connect. Give you some stats. 41% of the population that we cover is rural. We cover the spectrum of rural to urban, but our biggest city is Milwaukee. So that gives you a sense for where we live and what we've been tackling all of these years. And we, as others who have spoken, share deeply in our DNA this commitment to bridging the digital divide. So what we thought we would do today is share some lessons from our experience working in these hard to connect places in rural America to make sure that all of us have these tools available at our disposal as we're thinking about it, whether it's from a policy perspective, from a broadband office perspective, as you build your plans, as a company, as we think about moving things forward, that we hope these lessons will help us all to really be more successful in bridging the digital divide. One thing I would ask you all to do as you listen to today is pressure test some assumptions we all have. One assumption we all share that I want us to keep in the back of our minds is we all tend to think in the city in particular about things being an either or proposition. It's either wireless or wireline. It is either rural or it's urban. Or we're either going to connect to fiber or we're going to connect to fixed wireless. That paradigm is unworkable for rural America. Rural America requires an and mentality, not an or mentality. So please keep that in mind as you look and think about our presentations. I'm going to put up a slide that will hopefully help us to keep that in mind as you think through all of the different tools and real practical challenges that we're going to talk about today. Tee it up, it's very simple. In any state in the US where we are working to get people connected, you have some areas that are dense, they're urban areas usually. Fiber there and traditional wireless is a no-brainer. That's the best way to connect people. You can do it effectively, efficiently, and quickly. Then there are the areas that are really sparse. We were just talking about that home in the middle of a county in Virginia that is surrounded by basically rock and granite on the other end of it with nothing else around it. Well, satellite and other technologies like it is probably the best solution there. But most of us live and work in the middle. The middle is where the mix of technologies really comes into play. It's where we have to be creative and think about the and. How are we going to do this together? I'll give you a couple of examples. We today tend to think about, okay, fiber is going to get deployed through BEAD, and it has to be fiber, even if it's going to take 7 to 10 years for that fiber to reach that particular county. What we should be thinking about is how do we get these people connected to today? And so I would argue that we should be thinking about, let's get that last mile connected with fixed wireless, maybe fix the mobility gap on top of it at the same time, and then those homes can get connected in 7 to 10 years to fiber. But in the meantime, they're not left alone, they're not left not participating in the community fully, they're left able to live their lives to the full extent possible. So I'd ask you to keep this in mind as we go on, and we'll start sharing some lessons with you. Tom is going to share with us some real life examples of connecting rural Virginia and his experience there. And then we're going to zoom out, and Craig is going to help us to think through tools and specific parts of the analysis that we need to keep in mind in order to be successful in bridging the digital divide. So with that, Tom, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me, Craig. Tom, I think your county is probably one of these counties in the middle as we think about connecting it. What's connectivity like in rural Virginia today?
Reliable connectivity is something that every American needs, and we all know that. Mm-hmm. It does not exist for the majority of the people that live in Grayson County, Virginia. We need both mobile and home-based connectivity to do the things that most of us expect to be able to do each day. My perspective, I think, is a good one because 9 years ago, my wife and I sold a business in Charlotte, and we had lived there for 24 years. And so we had all the connectivity you could possibly imagine. Mm-hmm. But when we moved to Grayson County, it quickly became apparent to me that connectivity and the impact on life was a huge issue. First of all, we had vendors that touted that they offered great internet and cellular service in the western part of the county, and the only thing great about it was the fact that it was pretty lousy and in many ways non-existent. But when I looked at my urban experience, I took for granted what connectivity is, and I thought as long as my kids could do gaming and social media and entertainment, if I could watch 24 football games on one afternoon at the same time, I'm connected, that's all I need. But when we moved to Grayson County, we began to see things like law enforcement, volunteer fire and rescue people who would respond to a call but had no way to call for backup. They could not even page to get people to come in and help them. At-home employment, the number of people who've told me, I applied, but when they checked my internet speed, they shelved my application. Social services. Do you know that in the state of Virginia, Medicaid applicants are pushed in the direction of filing an application online? 71% of the people eligible for that in my county don't have internet. Medical services, home-based monitoring, telehealth, things that everybody in this room has probably thought about in the last 12 months. Doesn't happen in Grayson County. And the pandemic, yes, I will mention that, put the spotlight on virtual education experiences. Because when the public schools went to virtual education, half of our county and the children couldn't access it. And it was only if their parents were willing to drive them 30 to 40 minutes into North Carolina, which was the closest hotspot, that they could even participate. So these are things that rural America face every day. And I don't think most of us who live in an urban area really appreciate that. Well, I was a member of the Board of Supervisors, and I was asked when I retired to take over the leadership of the Broadband Project. And I obviously decided to do that, but I have to tell you, I didn't realize the challenges we were going to face.
Do you think it's even possible to connect counties like yours? I mean, talk to us, topographically and where they've tried to roll out technology before. What's worked, what hasn't?
Absolutely, it is possible, but not one technology will serve all people. We currently have a project in place, for example, and we're the first county in the country that the electric utility company was allowed to overbuild their dark network of fiber. And American Electric Power actually put 247 miles of new high-speed internet in our county.
That is a lot of miles.
Oh, $23 million worth.
Uh-huh.
And we thought that was the solution.
Yeah.
Until we got the design plan and realized that to connect 49% of our people to that backbone was going to require over 800 miles of additional fiber. And while very appreciative, we got $3 million from the state of Virginia to help us do that. So are we making progress? Yes. But what are some of the lessons we've learned? And I've got a couple of things I want to highlight. When we started our project, I personally felt that fiber deployment was the only solution. Honestly, our state leadership people and the funding that we got was really focused on fiber deployment. But the reality is, in a county like ours, which is very mountainous, very cold, very rocky, and with winds that are customarily blowing at 50 to 60 miles an hour, fiber is not always the best alternative. The cost, we estimate to really cover our county, it's $150 million more dollars. Deployment, you can't bury it, so you got to hang it on poles. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? The electric company has 40-foot right-of-ways. 100-foot trees do not respect those right-of-ways. And every week, we have trees falling. And even in the current project that's not even completed, there have been 3 times the cable fiber has fallen because of a tree, and it's having to be repaired. And frankly, it's taken 5 to 6 weeks to get that done in our terrain. So do I think it's possible? Absolutely. But it will take multiple solutions. And we had the advantage of seeing a UScellular presentation of 5G in our county. Mm-hmm. And I was blown away by the power of that bandwidth and that technology to be able to go over a ridge, through the trees, and still deliver high-speed service.
For a little bit of context for folks who don't know, we have been doing fixed wireless access demonstrations across the country. That is what Tom is referring to. And the reason we've been doing it is because there's a lot of misconceptions about the technology and a lot of thinking that, hey, this cannot work, right? This is the old technology. But I think we were getting things like 850 down, for example, right, when we did those demonstrations, and really showing the power of what it can do.
Well, and I'd like to make two other quick points. One is, rest assured for any vendor that's here, we are technology agnostic. We'll take whatever you have that will meet the needs of our citizens. But we also are going to demand that you have a demonstrated track record of serving rural America. Because so many of the vendor presentations that I've had presented to me, they didn't really have a clue about rural America. And then last, Adriana, we're sitting here in the hot spot of public policy. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, I hope that the people in this city that are making those decisions will really take the time to understand the uniquenesses of rural America and how far behind we are, and give us the flexibility to design a technology solution that will truly address the uniquenesses of where we live.
Thank you, Tom, for that invaluable perspective. There's nothing like understanding the challenges on the ground. When you've tried a number of solutions, you can learn from that as opposed to starting from scratch. So thank you, Craig. Let's zoom out. So you've been doing a lot of analysis about how far the money that is going to be dedicated to broadband through BEAD is going to go in each state. Some states have a really, really hard move ahead with that funding. Tell us how you think about it. How's Ericsson helping to think for us about the tools and variables that we need to keep in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Tom, for the remarks. And let's zoom out a bit first and reflect on what Tom said. It would be easy to dismiss what he said as anecdotal, a one-off. But as luck would have it, I reran the FCC numbers from the May 10th data drop, and it's still a problem for rural broadband. So we have about 12.6 million unserved and underserved locations still remaining. That number is likely to grow with any of the RDOF coming back in, as well as additional NTIA challenges. And so it's still a big problem. It's persistent. And there's a reason it's persistent, because it's hard and it takes all of our creative minds to solve it. So it's been around for a while, and we're going to work on it. At Ericsson, I think we're up for the challenge. We've been around for 147 years, connecting people. And within our vision for a world where limitless connectivity improves lives and redefines business and pioneers a sustainable future, is that first part about improving lives. And that's what matters in Grayson County, Virginia. And what matters to you? So what matters is not whether you have fiber or not. What matters is if you have sufficient connectivity to do the things that you want to do. So we need to solve for the utility no matter the tools. And I think the flexible approach is what we're advocating here, and it makes a lot of sense if you practically look at the numbers. And this is very important work. I mean, I think when you think about connecting the unconnected, it doesn't get any better. I mean, this is a project, this is a focus that you can hang your hat on, and when you tell your kids about it, you can feel good about it, because you're providing this utility to connect everyone. And in fact, this connectivity, this networking thing we're doing right now is really the latest milestone in human development. If we're to be a little bit dramatic and we think in the Wayback Machine, we can see how we got here, through improvements and milestones like language and farming and writing and printing press and scientific method and factory production, electronics, and now we're networking, really starting with ARPANET back in '69, continuing all the way through to the great 5G ecosystem that we have today. And with the funding that's available today, we have a real chance to close the digital divide this decade. And that is incredibly powerful because with networking comes the network effect, which means that everyone participates. And I believe that we are better together, and if we provide a way to get everyone online, not just some people with a gold level version, that we can enjoy the benefits of that and really see what creativity we can have when everyone can participate. And it doesn't matter if the utility for you is what would be under the ARPA CPF projects, which would be remote healthcare, remote education, and remote work. Maybe your utility is mental wellness because you like to binge watch Silent C or even C-SPAN. So whatever that is, that's up to you. But our job is to provide the connectivity.
Agreed. Thank you, Craig. I will tee up, because I know we're running out of time, a couple of points. You'll see us put something out after this to get this data out. But in the research that you've done, there are things that I think are valuable for all of us that are thinking about this problem. For example, rural America, you're going to have to go mailbox to mailbox with your connectivity. You cannot go straight through a crop field, right? And so that is going to increase the amount of fiber or amount of other technology that is going to be needed to connect these homes. Similarly, I think you have some estimates about aerial fiber versus buried fiber, and in some states it's going to have to be mostly aerial fiber to be fiber under these parameters. So we will share that with you all after this conversation to make sure that you've got access to the same that we're doing. You could say, well, why is UScellular sharing this? Why aren't we keeping it in our back pocket? But as I said at the beginning, our DNA is really connecting people and bridging the digital divide. We mean it, and we're here to be a partner and support to any of you who would want it. So hopefully today's lessons have been good for you as you start to think through these plans. I'd like to thank Tom and Craig for their infinite wisdom and for providing some real-world examples from their perspectives. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.